Mr. President, we thank the independent American journalists Bruce Green and Jeffrey Brodsky for their briefings in which they presented the Security Council with objective facts relating to the sabotage of the Nord Stream gas pipelines in the Baltic Sea in September 2022. They confirm our version of the events, namely that carrying out this crime without the direct participation or at the very least the cover of a state entity would have been simply impossible. This topic has been the focus of the Security Council's attention for several months now at our behest. We note that no matter what format it is discussed in the Security Council and whatever the positions of delegations may be on the draft resolution we proposed, nearly all the members of the Council have consistently condemned this crime and noted the importance of establishing the truth and identifying those responsible. At the same time, Western colleagues tried to convince the Council that there was no added value in international efforts until the completion of national investigations carried out by Berlin, Copenhagen, and Stockholm. They persistently urged to wait until those investigations were completed. Well, it has now been almost 10 months since the sabotage and 4 months since the vote on our draft resolution. There has been no information provided to the Security Council and the international community until yesterday. The German, Danish, and Swedish authorities stubbornly refused to provide any intelligible response to our numerous requests and appeals. They did not provide one to the message sent in October 22 by the Prime Minister of the Russian Federation, Mishustin, on the need to conduct a comprehensive investigation of the incident with the participation of representatives of Russian authorities and the Gazprom company, nor to the numerous notes sent by Russian missions abroad in this regard. We have repeatedly drawn the Council's attention to the fact that their entire response amounted to routine, formal non-answers with a refusal to cooperate under extremely ludicrous and far-fetched pretexts. Members of the Council had the opportunity to see this for themselves when they received copies of our correspondence with the authorities of Denmark, Sweden, and Germany, which we circulated in the Council in March as letters S 2023-193 and S 2023-223. It appears that Germany, Denmark, and Sweden, as a result of our efforts, have begun to realize that they are not just ignoring the requests of the Russian Federations, but are essentially defying the opinion of the UN Security Council, among whose members, as our discussions between closed doors have clearly shown, there is growing confusion and dissatisfaction due to the absence of any information on the progress of national investigations. As a result, after receiving yet another yellow card from the majority of Council members, Berlin, Copenhagen, and Stockholm decided to prepare the collective letter that was disseminated yesterday. Unfortunately, it is also very reminiscent of a non-answer and cannot replace a full-fledged briefing by them to the members of the Council, where we could ask them questions of which a great deal have piled up. Moreover, not only does this letter repeat the false assertion that Russia was allegedly informed about the progress of the investigations, the choice of wording also indicates that the authorities of Germany, Denmark, and Sweden are deliberately trying to prepare the members of the Council not to expect any concrete results from these investigations. And in any case, it is impossible to say when they will be completed. Even more telling is the language from the part devoted to the Swedish investigation. I quote, "The ongoing investigation will show whether anyone can be suspected of and later prosecuted for this crime." End of quote. It follows from this quote that Swedish authorities have never set the goal of identifying the perpetrators from the very beginning. And of course, there's no question of the inevitability of punishment in this context. And this is particularly striking given that it was Sweden, as was said today by our briefers, were the first to be at the scene of the crime. The demonstrative inaction of European authorities can be explained by only one thing: attempts to stall for time in order to cover up the real perpetrators of the crime. The evidently coordinated campaign in Western media eloquently testifies to this in attempting to popularize absurd versions of the events. While earlier, some journalists actively tried to claim that it was Russia itself that blew up the pipeline, a pipeline that was functioning in its interest, another fiction has recently come to dominate. namely the claim that some pro-Ukrainian saboteurs were behind the attack, yet they allegedly had nothing to do with the Kiev regime at the same time. It is telling, meanwhile, that in a recent interview with The Times, the head of Ukrainian intelligence, Kirill Budanov, in response to a direct question about the involvement of Ukrainian authorities in the pipeline incident and other terrorist attacks, said literally, "We are doing this right now. We use direct actions. We use them and we love them. We're proud of using them and we're not afraid of using them anywhere in this world against whoever." End of quote. Let's be honest, the bravado of the ringleaders in Kiev does not inspire confidence. They are prepared to take credit for any accomplishments just to shift the focus from their failures on the front and flagrant violations of human rights in the country taking place in the context of the strengthening of Zelensky's dictatorship. We also recall the publication of a highly plausible version of events by the American investigative journalist Seymour Hersh. Referencing reliable sources, he later cited information that following the March meeting between U.S. President Joe Biden and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, American and German intelligence was instructed to prepare and promote an alternative version for the media about who blew up the Nord Stream. Immediately after this, publications began to spring up in the Western media en masse, claiming that the destruction of the Nord Stream could have been perpetrated by a small group of near amateurs who had neither serious resources nor state backing. And this is despite the fact that numerous independent experts, including those who spoke before the council, made it clear that non-experts could not have carried out an operation to blow up gas pipelines that were protected with the latest technology. In any case, it is not something that the coastal states in this region, at the very least, which is considered one of the most closely monitored, would have been unaware of. And how do you square this with the repeated threats against the Nord Stream from U.S. top leadership? These have sounded more than once. However, as soon as inconvenient facts came to light, Americans and their European allies began to interfere with an international investigation in every way possible. Moreover, unlike many other UN member states, they were not interested in investigative efforts under the auspices of the Secretary General. They stand to gain much more in a situation where Western states enjoy complete carte blanche and absolute impunity within the framework of a rules-based order imposed on the whole world and which has nothing to do with international law. Mr. President, we want to stress that any efforts to cover up the sabotage in the Baltic Sea are doomed to fail. We expect the authorities of Germany, Denmark, and Sweden to take concrete steps to conduct an objective and transparent investigation into all the circumstances of the incident with the obligatory participation of Russian investigative authorities and other interested parties. In the meantime, we reserve the right to conduct our own investigation. In this context, we took note of the statement in the letter from the authorities of Germany, Denmark, and Sweden that access to the crime scene is allegedly open. We presume that in this case, our investigative authorities can independently examine the crime scene at any time as part of the criminal proceedings initiated by the Prosecutor General's Office of the Russian Federation pursuant to the article on acts of international terrorism. The Russian Federation will continue raising the issue of the Nord Stream sabotage in the Council until the perpetrators are identified and held accountable. The letter mentioned today leaves little doubt that this is not a goal that the three national investigations seek to accomplish. We will use all the means at our disposal to make sure that this goal is in fact achieved. We trust that our constructively minded colleagues in the Security Council and other members of the international community will support our efforts, and we're open to cooperation in this area. The Council must make it clear that crimes against cross-border pipeline infrastructure, which pose a direct threat to international peace and security, will not go unpunished. Only then can we prevent the recurrence of such crimes to which any state could fall victim. Thank you.